Josh Axe, welcome back to the American Glutton podcast.
Ethan, thanks for having me, man. Great to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thanks so much for coming back on. How are you?
Man, good. Yeah, life is really good. We just had our second daughter here about 3 months ago, so enjoying
Congratulations.
that, being a girl
Nice.
dad, and
Yeah.
yeah, life is good and getting better. So
I too am a girl dad and I love it. Do you have no boys?
no, I have a 4-year-old and a 3-month old.
Yeah, I definitely wanted a boy, and then when I was around little boys, I was so thankful to have little girls. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure I would have loved little boys too, but like my experience with little girls was so great that like just the way they played, I enjoyed parenting them more, I think, than I would have boys.
You know what's so interesting? A lot of my guy friends, they have a lot of daughters. In fact, I've got 3 friends that have 5 daughters. So Michael Hyatt, Isaac Meek, and Ryan Cole. And Michael Hyatt told me something. He's in his I want to say he's in his 60s, and he has again 5 daughters. And he said, you know what's really great about girls is he said they tend to always come back, like for the
Yeah,
holidays once they're older, you see them more. He said, the boys, he said, I noticed with my other they run off. So he said you tend to sometimes see your girls more later on in life, which is a nice plus.
totally. And that's true. It's wonderful. Okay, we spoke a few years ago and we spoke I think generally on weight loss, but also the state of health in America and all of these
Yeah.
questions. Do you think we've improved? Because I have a lot of feelings on this subject, sir.
Well, no, I actually think, see, I think we probably talked in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
it's almost 5 years ago.
yeah. So probably not. Yeah. No, definitely
Right.
worse. I mean,
It's
yeah.
worse.
I mean,
We're failing. Our lifespan
yes.
has gone down since then.
Yeah, obviously the pandemic and the way those lockdowns worked, I think, and here's the thing that's gotten worse than anything has been mental health issues, because if you're just solely looking at which conditions have risen the most over the past 10 years, it's going to be mental health issues. Nothing else is even as close to that. I mean, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and none of those pale in comparison. Now, other things are growing as well, but that's definitely increased. So yeah, I definitely say we've somehow gone backwards.
I have, look, I'm not trained in any of this, but I have theories. And for me, the mental health stuff appears to me, and I don't want to diminish any of it. Obviously there are people who have real and severe mental
Yeah.
health issues, but the way it's rising in like these catastrophic rates as you're describing, I just go like, if you're in a village where you got to hike 3 miles to get water, you got to actually use your body to repair your structure for
Yep.
shelter. You got to go out and plant vegetables or harvest meat somehow, and you're actually working. I don't think there's as much mental health issues under those
Yep.
circumstances. So for me, I look around and I go, we're sitting more, we're looking at screens, we're not doing as much, and of course we're going a little bit nuts.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a combination of things, and I think you hit on a big part of it. And I think there's another part as well, though. So there's I read a lot of these psychology medical journals, and one of the things that you'll notice when you read these psychology studies is that one of the biggest things that causes anxiety, depression, and mental health issues is when you're focused on yourself, your condition, your disease, how bad you have it, but thinking about yourself a lot. And that's really what's happened in our modern society today. It's become the entire world needs to cater to me and my identity and my diet and my everything, versus traditional identities were more, it's not about me, it's about my community and how can I serve my community, sacrifice myself for my nation or my family or my community. So actually a big part of the mental health issue is due to this constantly self-focus that has been created through just culture today. And I think the other half you just hit on, I think that we are on screens all of the time. And really, I mean, the studies show, I saw a study recently that said um, one was on people with ADHD. 80% of them are vitamin D deficient, but the majority of the population. So And vitamin D and just being outside in general is crucial to mental health. It's crucial to the health of other things, your bones, your immune system. But I do think the lack of just time spent outdoors is crippling and crushing to a lot of people's health, including their mental health.
Yeah. And it does seem weird, but now, I totally agree with you. Like I go outside every day. I live in different places, but um in one of the places that I spend the most time, there isn't quite as much like I I don't have to leave my house. I don't
Yeah.
have to, but I find myself going like, no, it's the morning. I got to go outside. It's almost like taking a vitamin, like I got to
Yeah.
go. And you see this in social media too, where you have guys who are prescribing sunlight. Go get a certain amount
Yes.
of time in the morning before you're putting blue light in your eyes, get the red light from the sun in your eyes. Um, and it's just like, it's kind of the same thing with fiber and vegetables for me. Like left on my own, I don't want to eat a lot of vegetables. I
Yeah.
don't like them. I don't want to eat fiber. Fiber's boring, chia seeds get stuck in my teeth and they're a pain in the butt. But like if I don't
Yeah.
do them, I find a very slow creep towards a negative outcome.
Well, I think again, some of this is societal in terms of the mindset that we have promoted. One of the things I respect so much about you, I mean, when I read your story about weight loss and how much you lost, I mean, in order to do that, you've got to get out of your comfort zone. What people of today is they've really embraced being comfortable, right? It's easy to just sit and scroll on your phone. It's easier to sit indoors than go outdoors. It's easier to eat packaged food and throw it in the microwave than make something fresh at home. All of that's easier. But if you want to live your best life possible, it's like we've got to really be intentional about doing things and getting out of our comfort zone and doing the hard things. It's like, hard things equal a great life if you are choosing your discomfort, right? It's
Right.
because if not, you're going to have a different type of discomfort and regret later on in life, of course. But I think that mentality of, I want to get better, I want to live the best life possible. And so therefore, I'm going to get outside in the morning. I'm going to eat cleaner food. I'm going to do these things. And it's true, people can take a vitamin D supplement, and I think that's good, but nothing can replace the actual sunshine. It's still not even close to as good. Again, now listen, if you live in Canada or anywhere above really the upper half of the US, you should probably be on a vitamin D supplement most of the year. Unless you're getting sunshine that day, you probably want to take a vitamin D supplement, but all of us should be trying to get outside every single day. Again, I just did a podcast on ADHD, and my number one prescription for kids with ADHD is spending more time outdoors.
Right.
It's the most important one, because boys are wired that way. They need to get their energy out, but also what it does to the circadian rhythms and actually balancing out melatonin so they can sleep better, and cortisol, which allows them to focus better when you balance out those stress hormones. But yeah, I mean, vitamin is, being in the sun and just outdoors, generally speaking, is probably one of the top three things somebody could do for their health, period.
Yeah. I just think the way that the vitamin D is occurring in our body, there's a system happening that creates that vitamin B versus,
Yeah.
I'm sure we could get some through nutrition, but that isn't the primary way for however long we've been around on planet Earth that our bodies were developing vitamin D through sunlight. And so bypassing it cannot be the best way to get it. But I agree with
Exactly.
you. Like, yeah, if you're in Canada or London, those people can spend a lot of the year with no sunlight and go outside all the time and just stay like pale vampires. So take
Yeah.
vitamin D.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, and so what happens when the sun hits our skin? It's our liver actually that starts producing vitamin D, and really the only other food that really has significant levels, and it's still not even that significant. I mean, mushrooms are the highest.
Oh, wow. I
And then
didn't know that.
yeah, mushrooms are definitely the highest, and then fermented raw dairy is probably the second, but it's still not much at all. And then actually, fish has some if you do sardines, but that's only from eating the bones. So
Right.
that's where you'd actually get it from. But for the most part, mushrooms have some, but really there's almost no foods that even have really any vitamin D of significance. So
Right.
really our only place, like if we didn't have vitamins, like throughout history for the last whatever 6,000, 10,000, however many years, the only way to get it was the sun.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or if you happen to live in a place where you're catching a lot of sardines, which is very few places. I'm sure
Yes.
the Mediterranean people were getting a double whammy. They got lots of sun
Yeah.
and
Yes.
sardines, you know.
Yes.
Um, do you think there's I think sometimes that like people require problems, you know, like
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and as our problems for literal survival diminish, we create these ancillary problems just because like even like really wealthy people that I know who I go like, well, that guy can't have any problem. Not true. They all have problems, lots of problems, and some of them I think are invented, are problems that the you know, and it would be hard to walk yourself through it because you go like, well, I don't like this problem. I want to get rid of it. Not so easy. You've created it for yourself and now you're living within this situation.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. In fact, there's a great book on this. I'm trying to remember the one I had read on it, but they really went through this, and they said the same thing happened with the fall of Rome. I mean, by the way, it's actually fairly scary if you look at the way that the United States mirrors Rome. I mean, the United States is the greatest superpower of a country since the Roman Empire, and how certain things started happening and creeping in. Everything from that, it's sort of this pattern of they went from these bold warriors, taking over to getting more comfortable, being political, setting up, having the problems of building out their cities and integrating the new people. To then, once that was set, it was other problems, right? We're going to start focusing on identities around, and not getting political. I'm just saying this is what happened. Identities around, different genders or this or that. I mean, lots of, but those all happen. Like the same patterns you'll see in the U.S., you saw in the Roman Empire, and eventually it created a fall because basically so many people had stopped accepting responsibility. It's this thing. It's really what you mentioned earlier. Everyone got so addicted to comfort. Everyone was so addicted to just living as comfortable as possible that's not the state of a warrior. That's not the state of somebody that's strong, whether it's strong mentally or strong physically. We want these warrior poets or warrior philosophers. Like we should all be aiming to grow stronger physically and stronger mentally. Well, if you're spending time scrolling on social media, you're growing weaker mentally. Now, if you're watching something educational on YouTube or a podcast, that's different. That's growing. But if you're just scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you're weakening your mentality because what you could be doing something else. You could be growing spiritually, reading the Bible. You could be reading the Stoics like Marcus Aurelius or the ancient philosophers like Aristotle and Socrates. Like you could be growing mentally or growing physically. Well, today people are getting weaker mentally and physically, and it's only a matter of time when an entire society weakens themselves to a certain degree to where there's a fall. And that's
Yeah.
that's the reality.
No, I know. My, I'm a big fan of history, and if you look at something like Will Durant's The Story of Civilization, which is a massive, I think it's 11 volumes on
Yeah.
civilization, there's always this pattern. This
Yeah.
pattern has always been there, and so when I look around and recognize that pattern, which you can go and see over and over and over again throughout history, there's part of me that just goes like, okay, well, I'm going to be individualistic and do what I can and talk to like-minded people and say like, this is what I'm interested in, because I'm not really interested in playing that game of like, let's make society conform to us, and like that's just not
Yeah.
my deal at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
um but there is part of me that goes, it's inevitable. This is happening. The worrisome part is that with the internet, it all seems to happen so much faster. So you can go back to Rome and watch it happen
That's true.
over 150 years.
That's true.
And we are now
Yeah.
possibly watching it happen in one generation, which is like, whoa, the inevitability of it is a factor. America probably will not be the great superpower forever. No superpower has been the superpower forever. That's fine. I have no thing of like,
Yeah.
we have to be dominant forever. I don't. It's
Yeah.
just like this is a natural cycle. Somebody else will take over and we'll get to live under their rule and see what they,
Yeah.
but God, it can happen so fast with the internet, with this kind of social contagion of ideas, and like, and the ideas you're talking about, reading Marcus Aurelius, it just doesn't kind of, it requires somebody to put a lot of effort into it, right? Where the
Yeah.
other one is something you kind of catch. Like, there are studies showing obesity is contagious. So
Yeah.
you spend time with obese people, you're more likely to become obese. All these things just spread out socially. And so what you're talking about, I don't know that we can reverse it just going like, hey guys, let's get strong. Who's interested, you know?
Yeah, well, the only way to reverse it typically, if you look throughout history, is uh, we have to be brought together by a major crisis to where the superficial problems that we've created, those become the minor problems because,
Yeah,
on Maslow's hierarchy, it's like, okay, these problems up here, now it's actual literal survival,
right.
right? So, I mean, that's the only way.
Yeah.
And then still maybe there's a continued decline, but maybe that slows it. But yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. I mean, I love history. I mean, I've spent the past several years reading a lot of books on philosophy, psychology, and history, and you learn so much. And this is something I wish other people would spend more time learning about as well. Because what happens is then you start to see what you're sharing, you start to see the patterns,
Yeah.
and even what you're talking about with something like you spend time around certain people, you become like them, right? We become like who we surround ourselves with. There's some great laws around this. We've heard one called Dunbar's Law, and that's basically, you have your inner circle of 5 that you become most like, but it's actually more than that. It's the 15 people and the 50 that you become like as well to a degree, those people that you maybe invite to your wedding, and you become like those people. And there's a study out of Duke University that found one of the top ways for you to get fit is just by hanging out with more disciplined people. If you hang
Yeah.
around with disciplined people, you will naturally become more disciplined and more fit and healthy yourself. And so that's, been proven time and time again. So yeah, I totally,
I mean,
totally agree with you.
and that conforms with another one of those things of like, action precedes motivation, or like, do something, and then the feeling of needing to do it will happen. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
it's a math problem. Figure out what the steps are to the math problem and just start going, and then you'll find that, like, it's not such a slog eventually.
So true. I mean, all of us have been in those workouts, right? I mean, these are the best workouts, right? You get started, you feel like crap, and you're 20, 30 minutes in, and then all of a sudden you're like, you get in your zone and you can just, hammer it out then and you feel great and you finish so strong and have one of your best workouts. So, I know that, but life is like that too. When you, what I recently wrote a book, and then I was talking to a friend about this too, Donald Miller. And Donald, he's an amazing writer. He's written a book, Blue Like Jazz, years ago. Another one's Story Brand, and he had told me how he changed. And he said, I was always writing these great stories about characters. And he said, I realized that my life story, if somebody sat down and read it, it sucked. He said, I just didn't. It would not be a page turner. It wasn't like a Lord of the Rings or or a Star Wars. It just wasn't a page turner. And he said, I realized what I needed to do is I needed to put myself into a good story. I needed to put myself in a difficult situation. And at the time, he had wrote a book called Blue Like Jazz. And about the year later, he just got fat and happy. I guess I'll say that. And he weighed about 380 pounds and was just miserable. And he said, I'm going to change my life I'm going to sign up to do a bike ride across the country from California all the way to
Wow.
New York, do all the way across the country. So he's like, I started training for it, lost some weight on the thing. And he lost, I think, like almost like 180 pounds. I mean, a
Wow.
lot of weight and pretty incredible. But he did this through his thing was, okay, I'm going to put myself in a challenging story or by signing up and taking responsibility for something, and that'll help me change. And so I think a lot of times for people, if I saw a recent study that said 25% of people have an idea of what their purpose is, like they know what their purpose is. And purpose is very much tied to, like, I know what I want out of life, like I know where I'm aiming. And so if you think about this archery, that's where the term comes from with purpose. It's sort of like, okay, if you don't know what you're aiming at, I think for a lot of times people almost don't know what to do. Like, why would I get healthy, or why would I? So to me, that's another important, this is, getting a little bit, it's on track, but off track to where, in terms of what we were talking about. But I think maybe that's part of the reason why some people maybe don't feel, maybe why they're not taking action or doing things. And there are, of course, levels of purpose. Like
Well, I
yeah,
actually think this is hugely important, massively important. So for me, I struggled with weight loss. And like the very first diet I did on my own, not as a kid, having a parent say, you're now on a diet and I'm going to
yeah,
regulate what you eat. But like I woke up one day as an adult, I'd gotten sober and I went, oh, there's another major thing in my life to tackle. I'm 550 pounds. This is not a desirable situation. What's my goal? What's my purpose? Lose weight. I proved I could do that by doing a liquid diet for 2 months. I lost 80 pounds, but then I gained weight back, right?
mm,
So my purpose was always lose weight. I think you got to get way, way, way more specific because we can have almost this mantra in our head of like an idea of what our purpose is, make somebody laugh. Okay, well, you can do that at a dinner table. You can do that, as you
yeah,
play with your kid outside and not even realize that the purpose you've set, you're hitting your purpose and it's not gratifying because it's not really thought through enough. I'm a big fan of what you're saying because I think we got to get really specific with this stuff. And my purpose changed radically when I did this. It went from lose weight to figure out a structure for my life that would produce an optimum situation, a desirable situation. So it no
yeah.
longer had anything to do really with losing weight. It was about who I was.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, I'll dive in and share a little bit more here, because to me, like, this has been so impactful for my life. And we didn't get into this. Yeah, I want to give you the quick version of this,
Please,
but
yeah.
I so we haven't talked for 4 years, five for a while. Well, about 2 years ago, I went in and was I hurt myself lifting weights. It had gotten a lot better, but I still had this nagging issue. And I went in and got a natural procedure, injected my own cells. It's called stem cell and PRP. Got that done. But somehow when they went in, I got an infection in my disc.
Ooh,
And then it got into my bone and I got a spinal infection. And I was told I might be permanently disabled. And I didn't walk for a year. Like this time last year, I didn't walk. So I didn't walk most of 2022 and part of
I
2023.
had no idea.
Yeah, it was just crazy. And during that time of not walking, I had a friend come up and he said, "What am I doing?" And I just, because I was in bed for a year, and I said, well, I'm writing a book and I'm running my business and I'm spending time with my family and doing everything I can. He goes, "Gosh, if I were you, I'd just be eating Cheetos and drinking Mountain Dew." And I said, I think for me, I'm just so keen on, like, I'm just really clear on my purpose. And so even though I'm in this situation, I I'm still really inspired. I still really want to do everything I can with my life. And the way that I think about purpose, and I'm just going to mention a few things. These are a little bit more religious, and so I know some people would, like hearing about that. Some people don't, but I'll be brief with it either way. But like the way that I always try and think about things, and this is true even with my business, with my marriage, with my life, is that I really, if you want to be successful, you want to start with the end in mind. Okay. Well, we can both set an end to our own lifetime. We can also set an end to, our spiritual life, or no end, eternal. And so, when I think about, when you read some of the great religious books, for me, it's been, the Christian faith, it's been reading the Bible, or, Judeo-Christian thought, it starts off in the book of Genesis in a paradise. So you've got this Garden of Eden, this little garden, and God says, subdue the earth and multiply. So, like, take this little garden, and actually what he was actually saying was, make the entire earth a paradise. Like, some of it's rock, some of it's dirt, but take the entire earth and make it like the Garden of Eden. And and then you hear two other commandments that Jesus says, but also other rabbis before him said, claim this is that the chief end of man, like, is to love people and love God. So just love people. It's adding value. And I think love looks different than most people think. I think love is, it's the thing that most people think, but it's also something additionally that I don't think a lot of people get. And love is, you're nourishing someone, you're encouraging them. It's the motherly love, but it's also the fatherly love of, hey, if you're not everything you should be right now, you're called to more. It's challenge. It's the coach, right? It's the Nick Saban. It's a, hey, get up off the ground, rub some dirt on it and get it out there. But it's that combination of things of what love truly is, and it's sacrificing your own needs for the needs of others. But when I think about what purpose is globally for everybody, it's loving God, loving other people, and then turning this earth into this planet into a paradise for all of eternity. And as a dad, if I tie my purpose, because I think purpose, we tend to have different roles. And so our identity feeds our purpose. So my identity is as a son of God. My identity is as a dad, a husband, a business leader, those sort of things. But if we were talking about being dads earlier, so, my two daughters, so the lowest level of purpose for me as a dad would be I impregnate a woman and I'm done.
Right.
No, but that's hey, you are a dad.
No, but
You're the
that's what I'm
father.
saying. Like
But
if you think in these base terms and you just set what's my purpose going to be? A dad, you could wake up one day having kids spread around the world
yeah,
and go like, well, I fulfilled my purpose. And that's I'm totally agree with you because there have been instances in my life where I set this purpose and I set it as words, right? And it's there's an idea attached to it, but it becomes fixed in words. And then I find myself in a situation where I'm like, this is exactly the words, but not what I pictured at all. And
yeah,
I've manifested this situation in a way where I wasn't intentional enough, or there was something off. I really like
yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah, because that's true. You can be a dad by impregnating a girl. And it's like, was that the dad you intended to be? Like, you got to get more specific.
Yeah, and so the way that I'll just give two other rungs as an example of the way that I think about this. So then let's say you go a level up from that. And this is a big level up, by the way. But then you go a level up and you say, okay, my role as a dad is to provide for my family and to show up. That's pretty big because even statistically today, if you look at the fatherlessness, and that actually happens less than 50% of the time. And even
Right.
so that's a huge step up. I mean, you're providing financially, you're enjoying time with your family, and then I think I think there are other levels above that though. I think like for me, the way that I try and think about being a dad is I believe that I'm an eternal spiritual being. I'm called to help my two daughters, not only them grow, but their generations and generations and their kids and their kids and their kids. And there's two things in particular I'm very conscious of, and maybe it's even three that I'll say that I want them to grow with. Number one is, I'm going to mention three. One is life is about relationship. And so I want them to understand and grow in understand what it means to have deep and meaningful relationships with God and other people, the family, but everyone around them. And then and then the other two things are, as a dad, I want to help them grow in character. Like I think about this, like, would I be more proud if my daughter, uh, got a full ride scholarship, or if she was just an incredibly generous, kind, virtuous person, right? I mean, it's like, so that's it. It's like, okay, I want my daughters to be incredibly courageous, generous, lovers, and and then also I want them to maximize your life. You got to take your character to the highest level possible, and you also have to take your unique gifting to the highest level possible. So if you're gifted as an artist or an athlete or an entrepreneur or whatever it is, maybe it's communication, maybe it's customer service, writing, whatever it is, but take your gift, take it to the highest level possible. Think about someone like Michelangelo. It's like he had this gifting of artistry and he took it to the highest level possible, maybe of anyone of all time, or at least incredibly high. So with my daughters, I'm going to be looking out for what are they good at? What are their giftings? And then helping them grow in that to serve the world, contribute to the world, make it a better place. And so I think when as a dad, if that's your mentality, I'm raising up a world-changing daughter who's going to help grow in character and grow in her unique skill. Those are some things I think that can help tap into your purpose too.
Yeah. No, those are amazing. It's very inspiring, and I do think that we do wind up sitting around thinking about ourselves far too much and getting hung up in these problems that we then want the quickest, most direct, tweet version option out, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
144 characters, Twitter version 1. They didn't even
yeah,
expand it to 200 characters. And it's like, If I can wrap up this problem in a tweet, good, and I move on, I never have to think about it again because I've got my answer for that. And I do think there's kind of like a numbed malaise to life in that
Yeah.
paradigm, you know? And I think getting really specific and thinking about these higher callings, and like I get I go all over the place with religion and spirituality, and you know, my understanding of God came through reading Maimonides, and like his
Yeah.
descriptions.
I love Maimonides.
He's
Amazing.
amazing. The book, A Guide for the Perplexed, really gave me a feeling of understanding God. And then I think about science and the laws of thermodynamics, and it's like you cannot create or destroy energy. Something is animating us, right?
Yeah.
Like there
Yeah.
is an energy in us. There's a difference between living meat and a dead sack of flesh, and that's
Yeah.
energy. So that cannot be created or destroyed. That means it's eternal. That means it's going on forever. So we can attach all of our own narratives and stories and whatever that means for us. There is something eternal happening in you right now and in
Yeah.
me scientifically. Like nobody can argue with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's have that mean something. Let's have that be big. And you know, and then we get into guys like Sapolsky, who's like, there's no free will and it all means nothing and it's mud
Yeah.
to mud and
All,
that's all
all
it
the
is.
nihilists just
Yeah,
trying to,
and it's
yeah.
like, and I can even get into nihilism, just to have nihilism be like finding joy. If it's joy that you're looking for, if that gives you some reason to exist, and you want to erase any more fundamental meaning than that, or absurdism, and I'm like, just make it fun and loving, like you're saying,
Yeah.
and we'll
Yeah.
have a good time. And we'll do stuff that makes people feel good, you know, and brings makes people uplifted, because there's a difference between having a conversation like this where we're trying to crush and oppress people versus trying to show people that like there's more to it and it can be good and you can feel relief, you know.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I totally agree with you. Yeah. I think, in studying history, you've read this before, I know, and probably talked about it on the show. But John D. Rockefeller said, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. And
Right.
part of it too, I even think about our school systems, the way that they're set up today. I mean, that's something I went to a public high school, and we didn't have like anything checking for guns, like none of that. Like this was like, Troy, Ohio, where I grew up, and just north of Dayton, and we didn't have any of that. It's a little bit of a different world today, but I think as well that there's this quote that I love, and it's by Confucius, I think, and he said, if you want to, um, gosh, I'm going to mess this up now. I knew it up until this second, but it's something like, if you want to make a difference for a year, plant weed. If you want to make a difference for 10 years, plant trees. If you want to, change the world, educate children.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I just made me think about this earlier, because we were talking about this earlier, like what's going wrong in society today. And I actually believe a big part of it was, I think it's in 1962 or 52, we pulled any religion out of schools and any morality there. And I think that was a problem too. But I don't think it's just that. I just think it's like what we're reading. It's like people have started to discredit history, discredit, again, even the people, what these people were not very religious: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and others. And so I think we really missed out on that. And by the way, this is always one of the things I appreciate about you, is you're such a deep thinker and so philosophical in your thoughts, because I think this is sometimes how you get to the root of, a lot of these issues. But yeah, I've really, over, the past year or so as well. I'd mentioned I had this spinal infection. When I was in that situation, by the way, it was kind of crazy. There were emotions I'd never experienced before that I experienced for the first time,
Yeah.
because I'm very positive, but I had felt despair and hopelessness, because like the exact conversation with the doctor was, I had to be flown in because I had a MRI. They said, you have an infection. I was in Puerto Rico. I got flown to Florida, to Sarasota. And they said, and he said, hey, your prognosis is this. Best case scenario, here were his exact words: you'll be the first to notice when there's bad weather, and you'll have pain the rest of your life. And the second is you're going to be permanently disabled. And so for 24 hours, and by the way, I'm a doctor too. Like I know this is bad side manner on his part anyways, but I really, went down a rabbit hole of how bad, if you have a spinal infection, how bad that can be. But then I realized this isn't serving me. And that's the thing a lot of people have to realize. I realized, you know what? I need to be thinking those people that were told they'd never walk again, but did.
Yeah.
What did they think? How did they move forward? That's how to live the best life possible. And so I had to say, I'm going to think the thing that's going to serve me best. And I think a lot of people need to do that. Think about, okay, is the way that I think and live now, is this going to serve me best? Is this going to lead to the best life possible? And doing our best then to become aware of what will lead us to the best life possible and start living that out anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a powerful thing too, what you're talking about. And I experience it in a way where it's like, I know that I am not my thoughts. My thoughts are separate from me because I'm listening to my thoughts, right? Whatever I am is actually hearing these thoughts and allowing it to dictate my life. And when I go like, that's not real, that despair, that's not real. And I try to like track where it's coming from and take it apart as best I can intellectually. Quite often I can prove to myself, oh, it's not real. It's total BS. I got up today. I got on the scale. I wasn't happy with what the scale told me. I looked in the mirror. I wasn't happy with what I saw. Nothing objectively changed. Like I can tell you, like my pound up today is because I had a high sodium dinner last night. I did, and even if I gained a pound of fat, it's not the end of the world, right? But I didn't do that overnight. But whatever, even if I did, I look in the mirror and whatever lens I'm looking through that is allowing me to see something disappointing, it's just not real. And so I can either choose to have my day based on that, or I can work my butt off while I'm standing in the mirror and not leave the mirror until I find something about myself, even if it's something, the way I treated somebody yesterday that I can be proud of. If I held open a door for somebody or helped an old lady with her grocery bags to her car, if I did something that makes me feel good, then I can lead my day that way. But my point is, like, it doesn't always work that spotting that stuff and understanding the truth or the untruth in how my mind is trying to sabotage me or my mind is trying to benefit me doesn't always take it away immediately. Like I can recognize that I have road rage sometimes, not where I'm going to run my car into somebody, but like I've cursed at people with my kids in my car. And then I feel guilty. I'm like, that reaction served no one. The guy didn't hear me. All I've done is scare my kids, and I'm now upset, and it's useless. So I'm going to not do that. And then the next time a guy cuts me off, I find myself getting angry again, but I don't curse, right? But I'm still angry, and I'm denying that anything he did should have. He didn't hit me. Nobody's hurt. Everybody's fine. I didn't have to slam on my brakes. I've just gotten angry. I'm still angry, though I know. So it's just not, it's not immediate, but I know that over time I could get to the point where I'm now going like, that guy's in more of a hurry than I am. Okay.
This is so powerful. One of the things that I've studied recently, and again, one of the things I'd mentioned, I wrote this book. It's called Think This, Not That. And in the book, I get into awareness, because when I look at people that are at the top level of spiritual health, and the top people of physical health, or the top people of intelligence, really emotional intelligence, they have a high level of awareness. Like, if anybody has spent much time in religious circles around, whether it's a rabbi or a priest or a pastor or any, you'll notice that most of them, they're very calm and collected, right? There's this sort of like energy.
Hard to really ruffle their feathers.
Yes. And that's spiritual awareness is what it is. They're very aware of themselves, they're aware of others. And so they have this awareness. And that's something, you look at all of the great, typically we call them mystics, these people, everyone from Jesus to St. Francis of Assisi to Maimonides to many others, Mother Teresa. I mean, they had this sort of like Gandhi, this calm power to them. And if people want to grow in their spiritual life. Well, you need to develop that, but it's what you're saying. It's I'm aware. I'm very self-aware, and health, this is important. Like if somebody wants to grow in their health today, there's a lot of these biomarkers, which I think are good. You can get blood tests. I like those insulin, the continuous blood glucose monitors, and I got an Aura ring that tracks my sleep. Like all this stuff is good. But what's even better is just being aware of your body and what works and what doesn't work. And I had the sodium the night before a little bit, so that's not a big deal. Like that awareness is absolutely huge. And there's a study I go over in the book, and I love the title of it. It's called The Batman Study.
Oh, wow.
So what they did is they took these kids and they had three groups. And they had these kids, they said, hey, we want you to go and work on this project, like build this house, do this thing, work on this project. And they had one group go in and say, hey, John and Lisa, go in there and work on this project. Okay. And they did it for a certain amount of time, and then they decided to play afterwards. And then they had another group and they said, we want you to self-distance. So it's what you're saying. It's where, hey, John, look at yourself like you're stepping outside of yourself and thinking, and we want you to work as hard as you can. Okay. The first group, we said work as hard as you can. The second group, and those kids did, I want to say, like 13% better. So they had a much better production, were more successful. And then they had the last group, they said, rather than saying be yourself in that way or be aware of yourself, they said, hey, who's your favorite superhero or princess? And so it was like, Dora the Explorer or Princess Jasmine or Batman. Okay. And those kids were even more successful. What's so interesting about the study is really just a study about identity. It's like you had these kids who were operating as themselves or aware of themselves or believing they were someone even more powerful than they thought they were, like Batman.
That's the key. If you can create that persona that's even greater than you perceive yourself to be, that's more able, that's more capable, that's more noble or virtuous, and that's what you constantly are working towards. That's the kind of suit of armor you put on every day. You go, I'm going to be Batman today. That's brilliant, dude.
Yeah. And the idea there too, there was there's some other studies I think are really complementary to it. And they're called the future self study. And so really believing and saying, okay, what is my ideal future self? Like for instance, hey, I got mad at my spouse, or I yelled at my kid, or something happened. And then say, you know what? I want to operate like future Josh. Okay. So future Josh, let me think about myself in 5 years, more humble, more gracious, more kind, more self-aware. Okay. And then try and be that person now. Now, for some people, that's a little difficult. And so another thing you can do is think about, well, who's the most virtuous person I know? And by the way, this actually ties into virtue ethics, which tends to be the most actually successful way of being actually growing your character. But it's saying, okay, how would, like, I'm thinking about a friend of mine, Pastor Craig Rochelle. How would Craig act like as a dad in that situation? Okay, well, he walks calmly, he puts his arm around, he gets down on his knees, he looks his kids in the eye, he says, okay, so next time that happens, I'm thinking ahead, I'm going to act like that now and do that. So anyways, and we've kind of gotten away from this in society in terms of modeling other people. It's like everybody should be canceled and you should just be who you are inside, which we do want to be authentic, of course. But my point is, I think there used to be a greater level of sort of apprenticeship, mentorship, discipleship. That's how most people learned. But for myself, I think one of the things that's helped me grow the most in my life is being very intentional about saying, I'm going to model this person and their character in that situation of what's the best way I could possibly act. It's kind of like being like Batman, only, hey, if there's a crying baby on an airplane, what would Mother Teresa do? How would she act? Like, how would she feel? So I'm going to try and channel and be aware of that and foster that same mindset.
Yeah, there really is something heavy duty, I think, to opening yourself up to everyone, every point of view, every behavior, and looking at it and going, that's a being there. That's a person. And look, I think for me, it breaks down if somebody's like breaking into my house and trying to harm one of my kids. It's very hard for me to think of how I could love that person. But outside of that, when we're talking about society and we're just moving through life, I don't want to categorize people and say those are people that I like and those are people that I don't like.
Yeah.
I just want to have this feeling of like, how can I be the best that I can be? And the best that I can be is kind of being accepting to as many people as I can. That's part of being the best version of myself as possible. Because I find myself being judgmental often, and that doesn't make me feel good
Mhm.
either. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's part
Yeah.
of
Same here.
why I'm building resentment and negativity. And it's like that's not servicing me in a positive way. I want to be better today than I was yesterday. And part of that is going like, I'm gonna allow that person to have their ideas, and maybe I'm gonna even become interested in them and see how they're servicing them, how that idea is benefiting that person, which could be completely foreign to me. Um, but again, it's difficult because I quite often will have a reaction and then I'll have to be interested in my reaction. Why am I reacting that way? What's happening with me? Because I want to present just openness and like let's all, you know, God forbid we have to have another 9/11. That was kind of the last time I think we as a country, at least, right? Let alone world, like, what do we have to have
Agreed.
aliens come and attack us so that the world can get together and do something? But right now, our country seems so fractured. And it's like, mostly I'm on here talking about weight loss and trying to help people figure out weight loss, which I think is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that want to lose weight. And I think, like, to your point, one of the biggest hurdles is that we get in our own way with how we think. That's it.
Yes.
We're
So
either
true.
moving through life thoughtlessly, and I completely understand, that people say like being obese is a choice. I totally disagree. I think there is a structure built up that supports most of the country that allows complete thoughtlessness. And then
Yeah.
we're moving less, we're eating more, calories are being subsidized by the government, and we're having
Yep.
lots of really delicious, not nutritious food, and we're seeing an expanding populace. This is not a choice. This is just
Yeah.
people moving through life. Fine, if you want to start thinking and making choices, you can get out of it. That's kind of
Yep.
the point. The choice comes when you want to step onto a different road. And I do think, like, I'm excited to read your book because I do think it fundamentally is how we're thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I to your point, I do think the more that we can think correctly, the better our lives are going to be. Like for me, I feel like I think rightly about food now, right? I think about it's my medicine. It's how it helps me achieve my greatest life. I do enjoy it too, though. Like we have a lot of fun. Like we'll make homemade pizza night. My wife's into sourdough now, or we'll do these thin crusts made of something healthy, all kinds of different stuff. Sometimes it's cauliflower, sometimes it's rice, or who knows. But we I think when we think rightly, it's big. And I would say when I was going through this health issue, as my mom, she beat cancer naturally, and as I worked with patients, one of the things that I realized over time was food as medicine is powerful, but mindset medicine is even more powerful because there are a lot of people and patients I cared for in the past who they knew the right thing to do. They just didn't do it, right? And so, and by the way, I absolutely agree. Like we have set up a system to create people that don't think. I mentioned the school systems, I mentioned the government, just get like it's just so there's no doubt the system isn't ideal. And there's no doubt, but all of us do have the freedom and ability, even though some of the choices are harder, to be able to change their life like you did, as I've done. And I'll tell everybody just a quick story here, just as an example of like a mindset thing and why, how literally I really believe for a lot of people, if they just have one mind shift in one area of life, I mean, it could radically change their life in ways that they didn't even think possible. Like when I was in high school, I was a terrible student. And when I was a freshman, and I was in freshman English, I had a teacher ask me to stay after class, and she asked me, she said, Josh, stay after class. I said, okay. And she said, what do you want to do after high school? And I said, I really would love to be a doctor. And she laughed out loud and she said, listen, You'll never be a doctor with your grades. My daughter has a 3.08 GPA and barely got into med school at Ohio State. And and I said that, by the way, before, because my mom had breast cancer, went through conventional treatments, lost her hair. And I just, as a kid, I thought, I want to help people like my mom.
Yeah.
But then the teacher said that, and she said, listen, you got an F on this paper. You're getting a D minus in this class. She said, you need to try harder. And that was it. But I walked out of there as a 14-year-old kid thinking, I'm not smart. And then
Right.
2 weeks later, I go to it. My mom brings me to a physician. I get diagnosed with ADHD. They're talking about me, like the doctor, like I'm not in the room. And then I think, oh, I've got like a medical condition. Like again, I'm 14. Like, okay, I'm like medically not smart. So in so in high school, I just stopped trying. The only reason I graduated at all, I graduated with a C minus GPA, barely graduated, was because I knew my dad would just be irate if I didn't graduate, you know.
Yeah.
And so I ended up graduating. I ended up applying to colleges, didn't get in anywhere except for one school sent me a letter and they said, it was University of Kentucky, and they said, you're not admitted, but if you come and take summer school and average above a 3.0, we'll let you in. And so I thought, well, I don't want to be the kid that stays back and goes to community college or doesn't go to college at all. So I went and I said, okay, I'm going to really try here. And the first class I had was English 101. And the first big assignment I had was a paper. And her name was Miss Williams. And I went and I turned in my paper. And a few days later, she says, Josh, would you stay after class? And I literally thought,
I'm
oh
done.
no.
Right.
Yeah, deja vu. This is all over again. And she said, what's your major? And I said, well, I haven't chosen a major yet. She said, well, I want to let you know that I think you should consider being an English major or journalism major. She said, you got the highest grade in the class. You got an A. I think you're going to be a really talented writer. Great job. And I walked out of there. And for me, I would call it like I had a memory transplant or a mindset transplant, because I went for 4 years and I just thought, I'm not smart. I'm
Yeah.
not even going to try. And I really felt like I was dumb. And then after that, I had one teacher tell me, you're good at this. And then I averaged above a 3.0. I later went to Johns Hopkins University, averaged a 3.9 there. Again, became a doctor and wrote books. And I don't say any of that to boast. I just say it because like I was this kid who was bullied in high school too, and also didn't feel like I was smart in a number of things, and then went on and was able to do this. But if I wouldn't have had that change in mindset, none of that would have happened.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people today, like I saw this with patients, doctors would tell them, you have to be on this pill the rest of your life, or you got to live with this condition, and so they just never even tried to change. Right. And so most people have, I call these limiting beliefs. We have these in our relationships. We have these about our health. We have them about ourselves. We have them about others, or about the world, like, oh, the world's against me or stacked against me. And so if we can just change one of those beliefs, it can radically change our life. And so, I wrote the book, Think This, Not That. And I really get into in the book, a lot of the stuff we talked today, I get into, here's exactly how to break through these limiting beliefs. Here's how to find your identity, find your purpose, live your best life. And
I'm excited because I think it's really important that we know we can do that for ourselves. We can be that teacher, Angel. Thank God she did that. But not everybody gets that. That's like a lottery ticket moment. You know what I mean? And not everybody gets that. And we have to know that we have it within ourselves to do that. We can create that epiphany for ourselves. I think it's a very important book you've written.
Well, I totally agree. And by the way, after that, it was after that moment, one person helped me do it. Then I realized I could do it myself. So I started going through and thinking about, where else am I limiting myself?
Right, exactly.
And started working on those things. So it really helped me experience a breakthrough. And I'll just say here, just a little plug. If people want to check out the book, it's in bookstores nationwide. It's on Amazon.com. And if people go to joshaxe.com, my name, I created a mindset masterclass and a workbook that people get for free if they get the book. Actually, hundreds of dollars worth of free stuff if they want to get the book. joshaxe.com. But man, I'm so grateful you had me on. Like
thank you for coming.
I love what you do. Like one of the things I love about your show is that you go deep. Sometimes people kind of stick at surface level, but you're always going sort of deeper in how we can truly transform. Because again, food is medicine is true. Exercise is medicine is true. And we should be doing all those things. But really, right thinking in the mindset, it's so important for us healing and living our best lives. So I always appreciate these conversations.
Yeah, I think it's fundamental. I think action precedes motivation, but I think thought thought precedes action. So you got to have the thought, I should take action. Then you have action.
Yeah.
Then you get the kind of benefits of like, okay, that worked. I feel better. I'm going to keep doing it,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. X. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ethan.